3 of 12. Mexico were leading at the moment, consistent this season, still searching for that first win though. 2 points adrift. Team Germany still very much in the mix. Team GBR. Italy, the winners in Beijing, they're in 4th. The host country this weekend, Malaysia, lie 5th. Canada 6th, the 7th, the Czech Republic, Australia 8th, 9th, the Netherlands, and in 10th, the champions, France. So that's how things stand heading into A1GP Malaysia. As we head into qualifying, let's get the latest from the track with Lee McKenzie.
Thanks very much. Hello and welcome to Malaysia. It's blisteringly hot here. Yesterday temperatures averaged around 35 degrees. This afternoon it's going to get even hotter. And then there's the rain. Every afternoon since we've been here we've experienced monsoon showers, and there's no reason why this afternoon throughout qualifying things should be any different. Joining me now, I'm pleased to say, Robbie Kerr, back in the car. Robbie, you qualified 4th here last year. All the cars seem to be going much quicker than last year. What can we expect from Team GBR?
No, we expect to be up there, similar position to last year. We know we've got the car to do it, and we've all been working really hard. So we'll just see what happens, but we've got to see what happens with the weather first. A little bit of luck may play into it, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, it was crucial here last year as well, but you were out in those rainstorms yesterday. How difficult does it make conditions?
It just becomes very greasy very quickly, and obviously under those conditions it's easy to fall off the track, and if you do that, well, it's game over. So you've got to make sure you stay on the island, but with the qualifying being as it is and it's so competitive at the moment, you've got to push 100%, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
And I suppose the weather, tyre choice, what else will be key to this afternoon?
Just getting a clean lap. If you over push that slight bit, you're going to be sliding around. Of course, around this track it's really going to hurt. You've got to keep it neat and tidy and obviously push to the 100%, so that's what's going to be key.
Robbie, thanks very much. Well, it was Team France who won both races last year. We saw some fantastic racing. But this weekend, it's been Germany's rising star, Nico Hülkenberg, who's dominated all practice sessions. And I think he's going to be at top by the end of today.
Thanks, Lee. No doubt about it. The weather is a problem for drivers today. It is said to be one of the most challenging driver circuits in the world, this one. John Watson, always up for a challenge. Lee McKenzie has more on that.
Opened in 1999, the Sepang International Circuit firmly put Malaysia on the map of world motorsport venues. Its distinctive Herman Tilke design sees a massive set of grandstands which can hold up to 30,000 patriotic fans.
A1GP returns to the 3.44-mile Sepang circuit. This time I get to drive a lap in the A1GP car to find out for myself the character of this wonderful 15-corner racetrack. After crossing the start line, the approach to turn 1 provides the first overtaking chance. Stay tight in the inside of the corner or go around the outside if you're brave. Turn 2 drops away abruptly at the apex and sets up your exit speed on the run up to turn 4. Turn 4 is the second clear overtaking opportunity. Taken in second gear, you can take lots of curb at the apex, then free up the car for a good exit speed. The uphill exit flows into the high G-force turns 5 and 6. Not quite flat out in 5th gear in qualifying, but a big lift on the throttle during the race. A short straight follows before the double right-hand turns 7 and 8, which should be blended into one. Then you begin the drop downhill for the hairpin turn 9. Watch out for ill-judged passes at this part of racetrack. Second, third, 4th gear, climbing to turn 10 and on to turn 11. A difficult apex to see until you're upon it. Downhill again to the most challenging part of the circuit, turns 12 and 13. And the body language of the A1GP cars will say it all. Turn 14 is the penultimate and most important corner at Sepang. Approached while still exiting turn 13, you need to look across the corner to locate its apex. Too wide and you'll miss it. Too tight and your exit speed will suffer. A top speed of 270 kilometers per hour into the final corner, turn 15. Again looking for a late apex to ensure good exit speed. It's pedal to the metal to the finish line. Unfortunately, I don't have to drive 35 laps in Sunday's very hot feature race.
Welcome back to A1GP Malaysia. This the scene at the moment at Sepang. The rain is starting to come down in Malaysia. Let's take you trackside for the first of the qualifying sessions.
Go out on track.
This could really change things, because some of the fancied runners, if they get held up on their lap, they only get one lap, remember. In each 15-minute segment, you're only allowed to do an out lap, one flying lap, and then back in again. You can't go back out doing that 15-minute segment. So if you go out and you get held up on that lap, bad luck. You've got to wait until the next segment to try and put in a quick one. And Italy are certainly the ones in best position.
And this has been declared a wet practice session.
The first of 4 qualifying segments is about to get underway here at Sepang in Malaysia, but the weather is taking a turn for the worse. It's been declared a wet session, even though we haven't seen the rain yet on the circuit. They're all on brand new tyres, brand new slick tyres, of course, and they're desperate to try and get a quick lap in here in the early part of the session. Watch the scramble now as they all try and get some space for their first flying lap.
The one car that was holding back was the host nation car, Malaysia. Alex Chung was still in his garage as this chain of cars made its way, and there, Malaysia.
Lebanon, yeah.
Yes, Lebanon be pushed back, but thinking about Malaysia, Alex Chung really rolling the dice and hoping that local knowledge will give him an advantage. Let the field of 21 cars effectively go out and trip over each other. There's no way that you're going to get a really ideal lap with so many cars so closely bunched together. And Alex Chung still sitting it out in the pits. This is a gamble for Malaysia. Will they get away with it? As you see now, Lebanon, maybe they're just a small.
Oh, look at that.
That is rain, and it's not particularly heavy. That's not going to be a problem. But if it does start to fall more heavily before the flying laps are out, well, Alex Chung might be the cleverest guy in the pit lane.
Well, yeah, it's a gamble, isn't it? But you've got to say that they ought to know how the weather works here better than anybody. You're looking at Team Pakistan. USA also waiting. That's interesting. They're also playing the waiting game. Funnily enough, a race engineer there on Team USA was with Malaysia last year. Maybe he knows a trick or two. Singapore is coming out. That's Christian Murchison driving once again for A1 Team Singapore. Scored points for the first time for his nation last time out in Beijing, and he's hopeful of trying to push to get into the top 10 here in qualifying. Still no movement apart from a wave from Team Malaysia. Now, who's going to get the best clear lap on this flying lap? Remember, it's just the one lap they'll get. They're coming down the back stretch and they'll be going onto their flying lap in just a few seconds time.
Well, the car just coming onto back straight, the mixture of white, yellow, black and red, that is Germany and South Africa behind. So these two are two potential fast lap setters, but look, right behind Ireland coming into that final turn 15, that will have lost momentum for Nico Hülkenberg. He was way behind Ireland. Now he's found himself trapped behind a car which he is capable of being much quicker than, and Michael Devaney is not obliged at all to give way to Germany and Nico Hülkenberg.
This is really going to hit Germany, who we were expecting to set the pace in this session, but he's going to be held up surely because Ireland have struggled for pace, whereas Germany have been very rapid. Oh, they hit each other. Well, how unnecessary is that?
Absolutely unnecessary indeed. And I mean, that was impatience from Nico Hülkenberg. He got trapped. He was certainly coming out of turn 14 a considerable distance behind the Ireland car, but he didn't need to put himself into such a position, and that contact has cost Ireland a run. And whether there'll be any penalty for an unnecessary an incident, I mean, he was nowhere near. He just dived down the inside, clipped the left rear wheel of Ireland, spun him round, and that was clearly an avoidable incident from Nico Hülkenberg and Team Germany.
Well, that's the way it goes. He's been fastest in all the sessions so far, but that little bit of impatience could cost him dear. You're riding on board Team France at the moment. Nicolas Lapierre driving. Last year, France had a double victory here, but it was with Alexander Premat, and Lapierre still learning the track.
Currently fastest in Sector 1 is this team here, Team Brazil. So Rafael Matos for Brazil has taken advantage of his position whilst the cars are out on track. You can see small spots of rain, and that was a real struggle going through turns 11 and 12.
Yeah, that's right. Keep an eye on those onboard cameras as well. See if you can spot much moisture around Brazil. Very white, so is France. Both of them must be slippery there.
Yes, and also the curb will be the slipperiest part, because that is a painted curb, as unlike the tarmac, which is just tarmac. A big lock-up from somebody coming into turn 15. As we look at Brazil, fastest in first sector now has gone to Switzerland. It had been this man here in Brazil, Rafael Matos, but it is now Team Switzerland quickest in Sector 1.
Let's see, Czech's just gone quickest, but now is it Brazil? No, Brazil goes second. Netherlands has just popped up. Netherlands quickest, but they're all going to change now. China pops into second place. Germany has come through quickest.
1:51.836. In spite of that incident, that is a blinding lap from the young German.
But this car is very rapid. As you said, John, Switzerland set the fastest first sector time. He's now coming down to the second checkpoint, and he's up, considerably up, by almost half a second.
Absolutely, that's a bunch of time. If he can carry that half second through, we're going to see the first A1GP car to break into the 1 minute 50-second time. That's a big call. Still a long way to go. He's got traffic ahead. Ireland has got going again. He will go to the pit lane. It should not come into play, but it is distraction for Switzerland.
So Neil Jani, who took pole position here last year for Team Switzerland, as we expected, on the pace straight away, and using his experience of the track, he's had a good clear run. What's the time going to be? A 51.5, fastest time we've seen so far this weekend, and nearly 3 seconds faster than the pole position lap. That was Brazil getting very out of shape.
Yeah, that was the replay of the incident coming out of turn 14, where we think there may be moisture, certainly on the curbing. Waiting for, it is South Africa.
Singapore. Actually, it's Singapore just about to complete their flying lap here. Let's see where Christian Murchison can put the car. Switzerland currently quickest, he goes 13th. It's Switzerland, Germany, New Zealand, Great Britain 4th, Netherlands 5th, South Africa 6th, China 7th, then the Czech Republic. But remember, Malaysia left it much later than the others to come out, and if he gets a good clear run, he could be a real threat. He's been fast all weekend.
Yes, and he's been very careful in just selecting track position. To when he does come out on track, he doesn't want to get involved in the cars that are behind him. They've all completed their flying lap, so he's just going around gently. This is a long lap, remember, 3.444 miles. He doesn't want to use up that new time advantage until he comes to the latter part of the track, coming up now into turns 10 and now into 11, the drop downhill into that very, very quick left. Right S's, and now he'll begin the process of building up. He wants to keep that temperature as near to operational temperature as possible, but still taking it easy. He wants to maximise his grip on this flying lap.
That's very interesting, John. As you say, he really is taking it steady on the outlap. He does not want to work the tyres too hard until he gets onto the flying lap, and that's very clearly visible from Alex Young's driving there. We've had something like 18 cars set a time already in this session. It's Switzerland, Germany, New Zealand, Great Britain, the Netherlands, South Africa and China. But what is Malaysia going to do here? On to their flying lap. Remember, only the one flying lap in this session. 8.5 minutes to go. It's going to be a very quiet end to the session because nearly everybody's getting an early lap in here. And look at the activity in pit lane.
But all the focus around the racetrack and all the Malaysia fans who've come to support Alex Young have now got the opportunity to see a virtuoso performance from this man already. A winner in Brno. He won both the sprint and the feature race. So Alex Young, currently with Malaysia down in 5th place in the Nations Cup, he's got a lot to do for his fans.
He has. Let's see how this lap is going. Still on the very early stages of it so far. This is up into turn 4. Climbs uphill a little bit, uses the curb, and then now he comes into the fast sweepers. Turns 5 and 6, virtually flat out through the left, putting something like 3G laterally from one way and then switching back to the other way, but he's slightly down on the split.
Yes, he had some understeer coming through turn 6. You could see that he more lock on the car going through turn 6 than we've seen from other cars out there. Now that may be a part of the penalty of taking that very, very slow out lap, because what will happen is that it's taken half a lap for her to get the tyre back up to full operational temperature, but it means, in theory, that the second part of the lap he'll have more grip than those that have gone before. That's the theory. If it works out in practice, we wait and see.
So up through turns 10 and 11. Now he's coming down to the very high-speed section, turn 12. Virtually flat out through the left-hander here. Maybe just a hint of a lift, and then back on the power. Then get the car balanced under braking. No, the split time's not good. Makes you wonder if the track's got a little more slippery.
Well, Alex Young, it hasn't worked for him so far, and as we're watching Alex Young on track on our timing and scoring, we've seen that the stewards are investigating that incident with Germany and Ireland up in turn 2, and both cars were at the beginning of their flying lap, so clearly that incident got the attention of the stewards, and I have to say, not unreasonably so.
Out of the final corner, Malaysia, it's not going to put them fastest, I think, but where will it put them? Across the line, and it's 6th, though. It's a reasonably good first effort. Pops them in behind the Netherlands and ahead of South Africa, but I think they'll be disappointed with that. They will certainly be out there gunning for pole position, and they're a little bit off. Now, France on track. The other car also on track at the moment is USA, so 2 potential front runners here still on circuit.
And USA has been fastest car so far out of the 21 cars we've seen through that first sector. As we go back to France, Nicolas Lapierre, who's really found it a lot more difficult in A1GP this series than he did in the first series. It was a real walk over for the French team, either Lapierre or Alexandre Prémat, but Lapierre in the car pretty much for the entire A1GP season.
USA's just crossed the line, but 11th, despite having the fastest first sector. I think the latter part of the lap has become more slippery because his latter part of the lap, yeah, and Lapierre sliding here. Be interesting to see, yeah, he's down on the split. This last part of the lap, definitely there's been some rain there since the first
the early run
charge of cars, yeah.
Yes, you can hear that the length of time he was off the throttle coming into turn 14 indicates that the grip leveled down in that part of the racetrack. That's 11, 12 and 13 into turn 14. Clearly has not been retained. The rain that is in the air, a localised shower down that part of the racetrack.
So here comes France. Where's this going to put them? Not fastest. Again, it's going to be around the same place as Malaysia, perhaps. A bit quicker. Yep, 6th. So he's 1 ahead of Malaysia. It shows, I think, France, Malaysia and USA, for that matter, all potentially much quicker there, but the gamble didn't pay off there. For staying in the pits and waiting, they got clear space, but they didn't get the best track conditions, and this man is currently quickest. For Team Switzerland, it's Neil Yarni, one of the more experienced drivers out there. He used his experience well, and there is a rather disgruntled Michael Devaney, who, of course, had contact with Germany and hasn't even managed to set a time.
Well, of course, Michael Devaney entitled to be disgruntled because he was taking his line. This is qualifying. You're not obliged to give way to anybody other than if you are in a problem. And that was clearly Michael Devaney taking his line. Frustration from Germany, and that shows a little bit of his youth, his immaturity. He shouldn't have made that move, but he had to do it. He was desperate, and desperate men sometimes do desperate things.
Our eyes and ears in the pit lane today, Lee Mackenzie and Simon Hill, and Simon's got information for us.
Yeah, just had a very quick chat with Michael Devaney, who's understandably very upset about the incident. Just couldn't believe that Nico would try something like that on a qualifying lap. The major problem, though, is they think they have some damage in the rear suspension. He said the car felt very, very loose on the way in, and there's a great big black mark on the front wing of Nico Hülkenberg's car, so the evidence is clear to see.
Thanks very much, Simon. Well, certainly an interesting start to the first qualifying, wasn't it? I mean, they were all in such a rush to get out there and get some clear space, and that frustration just boiled over a little bit. Germany got tucked in behind Ireland and did not want to spend the rest of the lap there, and ultimately there was contact at turn 2. USA, the last car in. I think everyone's done their run now.
Yes, talking about the frustration for Germany, coming out of turn 14, you saw that Germany dropped back from Ireland because he was quite close to him. He then, coming into turn 15, realised that Ireland had backed off equally so as he wouldn't overrun the cars ahead of him. So you got this concertina effect and the frustration. Clearly Germany have got the quickest car on the racetrack, though Switzerland have said something about that. But the reason for that, I believe, is that the time lost in turn 2 for Germany was considerable, certainly more than the 10th of a second difference between Switzerland and Germany right now. So Hülkenberg clearly is the class of the field in terms of out-and-out speed, but he's got to be careful. That could result in him losing his time from this first qualifying session. And if it were to rain maybe in the second, or the third and fourth, then he would be in deep, deep trouble somewhere deep in the middle of the grid.
Yeah, that would make life a bit interesting. Malaysia coming into the pits, so their gamble, as I say, didn't quite work out. They've ended this first qualifying segment in 7th position. Further down the order, just outside the top 10, is Team Canada. Sean McIntosh, there he is, driving for the team here this weekend. First proper chance of the second season of A1 to have a go. He had a brief practice run in the Czech Republic, but it's been James Hinchcliffe up to now who's been doing the driving duties. Let's go down to Lee Mackenzie.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I was speaking to John Village, who runs Team Canada, and he was telling me, interestingly, that because the temperature here at Sepang is just so hot, they're actually not using tyre warmers. They're sending the cars out on cold tyres because they actually warm up so quickly. Now, this doesn't seem to be the norm as you walk down the pit lane. I'm standing looking into Lebanon. They've got their tyre warmers on and plugged in at the moment, but it just shows you how things differ between the different teams.
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, that's interesting. And of course, what tyre pressures they go out on will depend on whether they've preheated them or not. Very different, as you said earlier, John, to what we had in Beijing, where everybody was just desperate to try and get some heat into the tyres.
Yeah, so that's typically street track anyway. There's always a low level of grip. But here on a racetrack where you've got high G-forces, the side loads are generating heat through the tyre carcass. The nature of the surface here is also going to induce a lot of heat into the tyre. But what John Village from Team Canada is doing is, I think, in effect, doing the same thing as Malaysia were doing, but by a different method. By going out with the tyres unheated, Sean McIntosh cannot lean on the tyre quite as early as he would if he had a heated set of tyres. So therefore, he's not putting the load into the tyre in the early part of the lap. He's saving the tyre. That's the theory. So far, it hasn't really worked either for Malaysia, who are 7th, or for Canada, who are in 11th.
1 minute remaining in the actual clock ticking down, but no one else, I think, will be going out because we've had all of the cars on track already. 21 cars a set of time. The only car that didn't, the 22nd, was Team Ireland because of the damage in that incident with Germany going on to that first lap. So it's Switzerland that have emerged. So far, so good. But remember, in A1GP, it's not good enough to do one flying lap. You've got to do 2 flying laps out of the 4 segments that you get, add them together, those 2 best ones, and that will then determine your grid position. So you can't afford to rest and think, oh, I've done the job, it's all over now. But Neil Yarney's as aware of that as anybody. He's run enough races in A1GP to know the system. He is fastest currently by 0.3 of a second from Team Germany. Despite that incident with Ireland, he still ended up setting the 2nd fastest time. Johnny Reid, who was on the front row, who's on pole position on the front row with Germany at the Czech Republic, going well again here. He's back in the car after Matt Halliday drove in China, and he's 3rd. 4th for Robbie Kerr, so Great Britain are in pretty good shape. Very good 5th for Jeroen Bleekemolen of the Netherlands. I say that, it might be not surprising. He won the race in Beijing, but he's been struggling this weekend, and suddenly they found some pace. So that's a good effort from the Netherlands. France in 6th place, Malaysia 7th. They both left it late to go out. South Africa 8th. China will be a bit disappointed with 9th. They've been running top 4 most of the weekend. 10th place for the Czech Republic. Well, Thomas was telling me earlier that's pretty much what he expected as his best, because they've also been fighting to get form. Canada are then in the 11th place, so Sean McIntosh, as we saw, just getting ready for the 2nd session in a minute, just ahead of Team USA, who also lost out by going out late. Brazil in 13th, Mexico 14th. Now Mexico lead the points, remember, by 2, but they're struggling a bit for pace here. India 15th, ahead of Singapore, then Indonesia, Ananda Mikula running 17th. Australia have been struggling, so have Italy, and it doesn't look as though they've managed to turn around their fortunes, unlike the Netherlands. Lebanon in 20th place, it's Khalil Bashir driving for Lebanon this weekend. Nur Ali for Pakistan, 21st, and of course no time at all for Team Ireland. Michael Devaney involved in that incident up at the first couple of corners. So that's how the 22 cars stand at the moment, but there's a long way to go before this qualifying session tells us what the grid will be.
Yeah, as we're seeing a couple of times that are slightly out of place in relation to the running that we've had over the previous 2 days, and I think part of the reason for that is that the track temperature is changing. And the consequence of that is if it's getting slightly cooler, down to 46 degrees from 53, that also helps cars that have not been ideal in terms of out-and-out grip, performance, balance, whatever. So the cooler temperatures may be slightly flattering those people, and you mentioned Netherlands in particular. They didn't have a particularly great session this morning, and they're sort of be saying, oh, we've found some time somewhere. The time probably is coming from those clouds cooling down the racetrack.
Yes, it may be making quite a difference, I would think. You're looking into the Indonesian pit here with Ananda Mikula, with that home track advantage coming up in 2 weeks' time. But he does know this circuit, so he'll be hoping for a little more, but he's rather far down the list. He's in 17th position currently. Certainly capable of more if they can just find a bit more grip, perhaps a bit more balance, and then he'll be able to perform more than that. But as we say, just looking down into Great Britain pit, Robbie Kerr has gone pretty well here, 4th fastest. He was a bit out of luck on the Friday practice sessions. They had a minor gearbox problem that kept them up late, rebuilding the gearbox last night. But he's been on the pace. He qualified very well here last year, knows the track from his experiences, and he's already showing the benefit of that experience. We're just a few seconds away from the 2nd qualifying segment here at Sepang. There's some work going on the back of the Malaysian car, but it's going to be Team Netherlands to lead them out onto track. Now remember, Netherlands started from pole position in China 2 weeks ago, but that wasn't courtesy of qualifying. We never got to a qualifying session. It was courtesy of their times in free practice. Now we're back to a full-on qualifying session with 4 segments and 1 flying lap in each. And the Netherlands did a good job in the first. They're currently lying in 5th place, and they've made sure of some clear air ahead of them as we start this second one.
There's probably not so much chance for opportunistic tyre choices, which is what they did in Beijing in a session that was officially a practice session, but because of the difficulties for qualifying, then that unofficial session became the grid. Here we are in official practice qualifying sessions, and now it is down to getting the best you can on your 1 flying lap part 2, as we're into the 2nd qualifying segment.
So will the extra cloud cover that we've seen in the last 10 minutes or so, and the way that it's cooled the track, will that improve the lap times? There is a bit of concern obviously here at the back end of the Malaysian car, maybe just some straightforward checks. They're not going to send him out straight away once again, but it definitely looks like they're making some changes.
Yes, well, Alex Young clearly came in and said there's something with this car doesn't feel right. They're working around the right rear of the car. They're looking at around the suspension joint. They wonder maybe it has some wear come into those joints, which is causing the back of the car to feel unstable. So that's a further step back for Malaysia. Well, they've got 13 minutes, just 13 and a half minutes of the session virtually remaining. They've got time to go out, but again, it's just turning that pressure screw on Malaysia. They don't want this type of problem. They want to go out, clear lap, get the time in, and get a strong grid position for the sprint race. Now that it is key to your finishing position in the sprint race, to your start position in the feature race.
So here we go then. First of the cars out there will be going on to their flying lap. Jeroen Bleekemolen, the star of the sprint race in Beijing, but the man who embarrassingly saw his foot fall off the brake pedal. It slipped off the brake pedal when he was leading the feature race, and he spun out of what looked like a definite victory. So bit of disappointment for the Dutch there, but they're still well up in the series. They're on 15 points, tied with Team France, and the top sort of 10 teams are all so close in the championship at the moment. Let's see what Bleekemolen can do. Into turn 2, nice and tight onto the curb. Now get on the power and really use all 520 horsepower of that V8 engine.
This is where you really have to make sure you get out of turn 2. It's a difficult corner. It's easy to miss that apex, and if you do that, you'll run wide. So Jeroen Bleekemolen made the best of the exit of 1, got a good entry into 2, runs the curve on the exit. You can do that without any problems. Now you swing left, flat out if you're brave. If you're not, you give it a little bit of a breathe on the throttle, then cut back to the right. Runs wide, misses his apex through that, but probably still carries sufficient speed. Now down into turns 7 and 8. You try to make this sequence 2 corners into 1. The key again is on the exit. You've got to make sure your exit speeds are high. Mid-speed corner is less critical here than in other circuits.
So let's watch him into the tight left-hander. Try not to get too much wheel spin here. The car moving, but he kept it under control. This is a critical section. The back end of the car wants to step away, but he again judges it pretty well through turn 11. That was smooth, and now through the dauntingly quick turn 12. If you go too quick through here, then you mess up the approach to the next section.
And also, not only do you mess it up, you scare yourself witless, because that is a very fast part of track. Not running out as wide as we saw him do in previous times throughout the weekend, taking the line that most drivers seem to prefer, staying to the middle of the road, making your apex, then letting the car run out over the curbs. Now the run down into turn 15, 265 kilometers per hour in qualifying. It will be quicker in the race because people will trim that rear wing and gain top line speed.
About half the field out there in the early stages of this second qualifying segment, and this is the first representative time. Remember, the 2 times added together, it's a 3:44.9 individual lap time.
Just quicker, 1:52.398, so he picked up about a tenth and a half of a second.
But New Zealand here, we're riding with New Zealand. They're on a very, very quick lap. They've set a very fast first sector time, although Germany's now out there going quickly as well. But watch, yes, New Zealand goes fastest. New Zealand quickest now, and the individual lap time very quick as well, a 1:51.872, and that's pretty impressive. Sorry, 1:51.4 it was, yes, a 1:51.4.
You're nicking nearly half a second off his time, but it was a very strong run from Johnny Reid. As we now look at Team Switzerland, Neil Yarney. We're looking to see whether Neil Yarney is going to do the business to consolidate what he did in that first practice session. We don't think this is going to be the case, because Johnny Reid's time currently sees New Zealand the fastest of everyone.
Well, I reckon this might be enough. Let's see, Switzerland across the line. Does he reclaim it? Yes, he does. By just under 0.3 of a second, it's Switzerland back on top. But what about Team Germany? Hulkenberg going quickly, as we've seen all weekend so far. This is looking pretty good for the young German. Is he now going to claim the top spot? No, he goes third. It's Switzerland, New Zealand, Germany top 3.
And that time, 1:51.645, just literally tenths of a second away from Switzerland and New Zealand, and that would be disappointing. But look at this, South Africa, and it is USA. 2 cars battling down in turn 9 and really tripping over each other. Is that one car coming in? I suspect maybe it is the USA coming in, but clearly South Africa not very happy about it.
Well, that's, yeah, again, this shouldn't really be happening.
Both drivers are on a flying lap.
Yeah, that's the trouble. They're both on a flying lap. Maybe USA had caught him on that corner, and now he goes past, and South Africa back right out of it. He's given up on the lap, but I think effectively that's both of their laps ruined, and USA, it's just not coming together for them at the moment.
In fact, what had happened was it was America trying to pass South Africa. South Africa has in fact completed its lap. So it was Adrian Zog who was trying, well, maybe he didn't even know that the USA was directly behind him. He did when he got to turn 14, but it might have been too late. That will have impaired the time from Team USA.
So USA staying in 10th place, but they will be furious about that being held up on a lap when they were on the flying lap and South Africa was meant to be coming in. Meanwhile, we saw there was work going on the Malaysian car. Simon Hill can tell us more.
Yeah, they've had some problems with the rear brakes on the right rear wheel. Basically, it's something that they discovered when they took the wheels off when the car came in. It's something that Alex hadn't picked up on, Alex Young, the driver. But subsequently, they've also made some fairly significant setup changes. They've changed the preload on the front springs, and they've also changed the front and rear wings, as you can probably see on screen.
Thanks, Simon. So plenty of work going on there. They've still got 8.5 minutes to get out and do their flying lap, so they're not that pushed for time. And Alex is cool enough to know that he doesn't need to panic. But Switzerland are currently fastest here. They've retained the top spot from New Zealand, Germany and Great Britain, who've now completed their second lap. So Great Britain holds on to 4th place. China's popped up to 5th position now, just ahead of the Netherlands. South Africa are in 7th place, ahead of Canada, who's up to 8th, then Mexico and USA. But we've still got some potential front runners to set their lap in this session. That includes France, Malaysia, of course, also Czech Republic, Brazil, and indeed some of those that were struggling earlier, like Indonesia here and Italy.
In the meantime, Ireland, who got clipped at the rear by Germany in qualifying segment 1, have been out. They did a 1:52.894, so the car looks to be not damaged, and a good run. That's the quickest run we've seen all weekend from Team Ireland, with Michael Devaney behind the wheel.
So Indonesia takes a big wide line into turn 5, does Ananda Mikula. Maybe that's just wasting a moment or two. Let's ride on board with him through turn 6, out to the edge, and now this critical double apex.
Yes, difficult to get the car in precisely, because it's the key to getting out of the corner that really makes the difference. Good exit. Didn't look like he made the apex going in. It wasn't so important as making it on the exit on the corner, down into turn 9. And again, you can turn into this corner quite late, as you see Ananda Mikula do. There's a sawtooth curbing there at the apex. A lot of drivers try to run it, but it does shake the car up a lot.
Still some fairly heavy-looking clouds above, aren't there? So you've got to be careful there. Fractional lock-up on the brakes. Now through the quick one into the left-hander. And Ananda Mikula really desperate to try and find a bit of time.
Something flew up in the air now, whether that was a bit of tape or something on the racetrack. It doesn't seem to have had a problem for Ananda Mikula. Good apex in turn 14 on the throttle, flat out now, all the way down into turn 15. It's a question of whether you want to place yourself tight against that white line, which is what Mikula will do as he comes into the braking zone, and we go back to the pit lane.
So Malaysia is coming out. They've sorted out all their little difficulties, made their setup changes, and Malaysia will be a threat, but they've got some work to do here. Let's see where this puts Indonesia. Meanwhile, across the line he comes. It's 13th place for Indonesia, pushes Lebanon and Pakistan back down a position. But people keep an eye on what Malaysia are doing. Also, of course, waiting for Team France to come out and put in their second flying lap. And France are, they're just out on circuit. There they are, just about to begin their flying lap. Well, meanwhile, Italy is on a flying lap. Now, Enrico Tocacello, who won the feature race in Beijing, I don't know what's going on this weekend for Team Italy, but they have really been struggling to show any kind of pace.
Well, I mean, I have to say that the line that Tocacello took coming through turn 15, he took a very, very late apex indeed from the on-board camera position. Now it charges down into turn 1, but suddenly, or not suddenly, the team that won the race, and there was a bit of slowly catch the monkey in Beijing, in fairness, because other drivers were quicker than Enrico Tocacello. It was that wise head that got him to the end, and a victory. He's on track.
Miliani fastest for Team Switzerland currently, another little wave, and things are going pretty well according to plan for him. There's a notice on our screens that Team South Africa and the United States are under investigation, obviously, for that incident that we just caught the end of riding with Team USA earlier.
And that's the second time that Adrian Zauger's gone up in front of the stewards, because he got caught out yesterday when China spun down at turn 14, and he was hauled over the coals for not observing and slowing down, waved yellow flags.
Now this is a lap to watch, because Nicolas Lapierre really has got himself dialed into this circuit. He went out a bit later than some of the others in the first qualifying segment, and it proved to be the wrong choice. Actually now it looks as though running late in this second segment could well be the way to go. France and Malaysia could swing the balance a little bit, but remember, their first segment time wasn't that quick, so even if they put in a very rapid qualifying time here, it might not be enough to put them fastest now. They might have to wait till segment 3.
They certainly will, because a 1:52.648 was the time, so they've got a long way to go. He would need to be doing a 1:50 point something to drag himself up to the company of Switzerland, New Zealand and Germany, and I don't think he'll be doing a 50-0 on this particular run.
No, but he might well do a low 1:51, and if he can do that and then repeat it in the next qualifying segment, then France will be right up there, as we have come to expect, the reigning title holders. But they've had a difficult start to the season. Let's see where this puts them. 9th place, but what's the time?
52.8, that is nowhere. They're not even at the races here this weekend.
They're not. I mean, I thought he was looking quite good this morning, put in a quick lap time this morning, and I thought, uh-oh, here we go, France are back on form. But they're actually struggling a little bit there. Team USA, look, there's the evidence of the contact between Giebler for Team USA and Team South Africa's car, driven by Adrian Zaug a little earlier on. Now, here we are with Malaysia. They're onto the flying lap now. Let's see with Alex Young, and those changes that they've made to the car have allowed him to challenge for one of the fastest times of the day.
It's always slightly worrying to me that a team makes major changes to a car setup in qualifying when you've got 4 runs with essentially maybe 3 brand new sets of tyres. To start making significant car changes is not necessarily the way to go, but Alex Young, certainly a driver who is familiar with this racetrack, who's capable of winning races, as we've seen so far this year and then last year as well. But if he can't find that time with the car set up that he started the first qualifying session in, it's very unlikely it's suddenly going to appear out of the woodwork with the changes that he's made this time.
Still waiting for second laps to come up, also for the Czech Republic, for Brazil and for Singapore, so that's going to change a few of the places further down. Australia's managed to drag themselves up a bit, by the way. They're now up to 12th, but they may be under threat from those nations I just mentioned. Let's just focus on Alex Young exiting onto that back stretch. Pretty good out of there. No traction control, remember, on an A1GP car. It's all about right foot control, but on new tyres you ought to be able to get on it pretty hard, and Alex Young looked like he was on it hard. 165 miles an hour, onto the brakes now, down to second gear, and then it's that patience required here, and back on the power again, flat out through the gears, and let's see where this puts him.
Well, we're not seeing any purples come up against Malaysia's position, so we're not seeing any 53.151 on those changes. As I indicated, were a desperation. He is actually slower on this run. Now, whether that was on the same set of tyres he ran the first session on, we do not know. We didn't get that information from the pit lane. But if it is on a new set of tyres, well, clearly they've gone very, very far in the wrong direction.
Brazil here, coming around, and we'll see what Rafael Matos can do.
Well, we've just been informed from the pit lane that my suggestion that it was used tyres was correct. So that was a run on a set of used tyres from Malaysia, so that time doesn't look quite as bad as the actual time would indicate.
And into the final corner, let's see where this puts Brazil. Before, at the end of the first segment, they were 13th. Rafael Matos, who was impressive in Beijing, only his second outing in an A1GP car, up to 12th. But again, it's a slightly slower time than he managed in the first segment.
I think what we're saying is everybody went out in qualifying 1 on brand new tyres. They're going out in qualifying 2 in the main on those tyres they ran in qualifying 1, because they will most likely have either 2 or 1 set of new tyres remaining. So in the case of most of the teams at the front, I suspect that's what they also have done. We would hope to see now in qualifying 3 and 4 teams reverting back to the new sets they have available to them. And once again, look to see qualifying times getting down into the low 1-minute 50s.
Now, this is interesting. Singapore has not set a time in this session, and it doesn't look like he's going to either, does it, with 35 seconds remaining? There's obviously been a problem on the car, and they have, or he's saving tyres, whatever, but they have not sent Christian Murchison out, so that means he's at the bottom of the pile at the moment.
Well, remember, Christian Murchison, you at home didn't see this, but he did run a new set of tyres this morning. He actually ended up second quickest as a consequence of doing so when everybody else was running on old tyres. So he is 1 set of tyres down in relation to the competition. He knows that. He's got his benchmark position. He's sitting out this session. We'll go in 3 and 4.
Yeah, so he's not going to panic for the moment. He'll wait for the last 2 qualifying segments. It's the checkered flag on this one, and all cars are back in the pits now anyway. So with 2 sessions out of the 4 completed and their times added together, Switzerland currently hold provisional pole position, but the individual fastest time of the day so far has been set by New Zealand, who are currently second when you've added the 2 of their times together. So it's Switzerland, New Zealand, Germany 3rd, Great Britain 4th, then China 5th, and they put in a pretty rapid lap on that last run, did China. Netherlands still in a strong 6th, then South Africa, Canada, France, Malaysia. Mexico, the points leaders, down in 11th. Czech Republic, podium finishers already this year, down in 12th place. Brazil in 13th. USA have been in trouble on both segments so far. They went out late in the first segment and it didn't work. Then they got fouled up by getting into an incident with South Africa in that second segment, and so they're 14th. Australia 15th, India 16th, ahead of Indonesia, Italy, Lebanon, Pakistan, and then Ireland and Singapore. And of course, remember, Ireland and Singapore only have 1 time apiece. That's why they're right down at the bottom at the moment. Well, certainly interesting, John, and tactically when to go out, which tyres to use, it's all part and parcel. Just look at that. Yeah,
that's just a bit pick-up.
Yeah.
The question I would have for Malaysia is, you've made a change. Is that change an improvement? Because the time clearly was slower, and that's down to running a set of tyres that were run in the first qualifying segment. Alex Young looks to be happy. He's not leaping about asking engineers to make massive changes yet again to his car, so I think that he's going to stick with the changes that were made between the segment 1 and segment 2. And he looks down at the information that's been put on the board in the Malaysia garage as we look skyward again, and there are our times.
So there's confirmation. If you look at New Zealand's time there, he's second, but the actual individual fastest lap time belongs to him. It's a 1:51.433. But you add the 2 times together, and that gives your aggregate, and then that gives the totals for your grid position. So currently it's Switzerland, New Zealand on a provisional front row, Germany and Great Britain provisionally on the second row, China and Netherlands, again, well up, but maybe there's more to come from China yet. Behind them, we've got South Africa and Canada. Sean McIntosh definitely getting on the pace here this weekend. He's had to sort of pick it up from a bit further back than the others, not been in the car much. France and Malaysia still behind and still a threat with 2 segments remaining. So we could still see Lapierre and Young, I think, move up the order. Behind them in 11th, we've got Mexico, the reigning, well, points leaders, Salvador Duran there. Thomas Henger right behind him for the Czech Republic, then Brazil and USA, Australia and India. Ibrahim's going better this afternoon than he has been in some of the other practice sessions this weekend. Indonesia and Italy next up. Again, Tococello struggling. Then Lebanon in 19th place, 20th place for Pakistan. And then the 2 nations that have only set 1 lap time apiece, they are Ireland and Singapore.
One of the wettest monsoons. Now, if that makes sense, it makes sense to somebody. Monsoons are always wet, but this is a wetter monsoon than a normal monsoon.
Yeah, they've had a lot more rain just the last few weeks than they would normally expect at this time of year. So, well, we'll wait to see if it does affect us this afternoon. We've seen some pretty heavy thunderstorms while we've been out here this week. Now, green flag already on this 3rd qualifying segment, and Salvador Duran for Team Mexico is out on circuit. And let's see whether he can improve on his current 11th position.
Well, for the leader in the championship, the World Cup of Motorsport, it's not been a good weekend to date for Mexico. And they're struggling to find pace. They're currently only 11th quickest. Salvador Duran, we know, is more than capable of putting a car onto the front row. He was there for Holland for sure. And the young man from Mexico wonders, probably scratching his head, where has my pace gone?
Yeah, it is interesting how there's 1 or 2 teams in that situation here this weekend. Teams that you would think would be able to answer the questions. But here's the other one, Italy, very much in the same boat, down in 18th place currently. Tococello was pretty rapid here last year. He's one of the drivers that was here at Malaysia last year, and qualified in 10th place on that occasion. In fact, in one of the qualifying segments, I seem to remember he was something like 3rd quickest, and yet he hasn't shown anything like that pace this weekend. So they're just not getting the engineering solutions right. But China are, and they've shown a very quick car all weekend. They're currently lying in 5th place, and now we'll see whether Frankie Cheng can improve on that.
Well, the young man from China, who's currently resident in Oxford in England, has really lifted the China team. In their initial year, they used Chinese drivers who are Chinese-based. But Frankie Cheng has been racing outside of China for a number of years now, and that experience clearly benefiting Team China to the point where we're now talking about China as a major force in A1GP. As we watch, this is coming up the main straight, as we watch Khalil Bashir for Lebanon. Khalil Bashir not been in the car that much for Lebanon, getting the opportunity, and that's an interesting line. Khalil, is that one of the new lines that you're developing for A1GP, or somebody not showing you the way around Malaysia's Sepang circuit?
Well, he's got his chance again behind the wheel, hasn't he? Basil Shaban drove the Lebanon car last time out. They've also had Graham Rahal driving this season, but he's not going to be contesting any further A1 races for Lebanon. And it's going to be up to Khalil Bashir, Basil Shaban and Alex Khatib as well, who's their rookie driver this year, who's been given the opportunity to do some of the rookie sessions, which occur now on a Friday morning. But Khalil trying to get to grips with this circuit.
I mean, he's struggling. I mean, I was going to say he's got understeer, and the understeer caused him to run wide, and the back end of the car caught the grass, and away she went. Luckily for Khalil Bashir, he was able to keep that car in control. But you would even pick up on that outlap, his lines through turns 1 and 2, which are slow speed corners, were way off the apexes, and he missed the apex in the right-hand turn 6. Let's watch again. Well, we're seeing the exit of the corner. That's the consequence of a car and driver who are not working together.
Yeah, just as well the grass isn't particularly wet at the moment, because he managed to get away with that. That was very much on the grass, not just on the curb. Now he's on to the latter third of the lap here. Let's see whether this is going to improve his position at all. He's currently in 19th place, but he's likely to actually lose a couple of places in this session, because both Ireland and Singapore are behind, and they've both got to set a second lap. Nonetheless,
for Khalil, not in a car on a regular basis, that really, or this really, is a lap about driving as much on adrenaline, and a single lap, you know, just almost hold your breath. Again, runs very wide on the exit of turn 15, and another error in this particular lap from Khalil Bashir.
Across the line he goes, so he stays 19th, and that lap was, yeah, it's his second best lap, so, well, not really any change for Khalil Bashir there for Lebanon.
Now let's see what can happen to Mexico with Salvador Duran. Currently Mexico down in 11th place, best lap being a 1 minute 52 point, I think it's 7:29. So this lap has to be better for Mexico. 54.042.
Well, I think he was on old tyres.
I think you're right.
As he came out, it did look as though those tyres already had the sheen taken off them, and that's really confirmation of that. You can tell on the stopwatch that he didn't have new tyres on. So I thought most would have a set of new tyres, but he's obviously saved them for the final qualifying segment. Now let's watch Team Ireland.
Well, their first run, of course, that was a result of a collision. The second run, Michael Devaney did a 52.894. That would have put him, in terms of pace in that session, about midfield, 10th to 12th. Michael, a big bunch of opposite lock going through turns 13 into 14. So just they've struggled really again all weekend to find a car balance. Hard on the throttle in third gear in the exit out of turn 14. The back end just kicked out, but not a problem when the tyres are fresh like this. Maybe a bigger problem come race when he's going to do a lot more laps on a single set of tyres.
Well, let's see whether he can jump up. He's obviously going to jump up, and he may even be knocking on the door of the top 10, which would be quite an achievement, because they've been outside the top 10 up to now through the practice sessions. Let's see what it is. Michael Devaney crossed the line for Team Ireland, 13th, so not far off the top 10. It wasn't as good a lap as he did last time around.
153.576. So, but it's good enough to get him up to 13th place, and he's got one more shot to go. So Michael Devaney, who's really, I mean, Team Ireland, one of the smartest, most professional teams in A1GP, have been bedeviled with problems really since the start of this series, and I mean, just getting clipped as they were by Germany. No fault of Michael Devaney, and really, although the stewards will deal with it, clearly our view is the responsibility lies with Germany in that incident.
Now Ryan Briscoe driving for Team Australia here, back in the car after Carl Reindler drove it very effectively in China a couple of weeks ago and managed to pick up a third place in the feature race. Ryan himself also had a strong podium finish at Zandvoort at the start of the year, but they are one of those teams, a bit like Italy, who've been struggling to get the car balanced and working, and currently Australia down in 16th position. His best lap last time around was a low 1 minute 53. He's got to get into the 52s at least, and remember the pace is a 1 minute 51 point something. There's quite a big variation in pace. I thought we would see times a little closer.
Oh, trouble, big oversteer going into turn 14 in the back of the car. It's a bucking Bronco, it's not an A1GP car, and Ryan Briscoe has lost his nose, and I'm sure there's a lot more damage under that car. He got the right front suspension also is broken. We saw, and Alan Jones, he can see it on the pit lane as he looks at the pictures, the right front suspension, not only the suspension, he's trashing the tyres. It rubs against parts of the bodywork, and that is one front set of tyres. The rubber is flailing. He's got to slow down. You must slow down, because you will do a lot more damage to your car than just that we see. Watch again what happens. Back end steps out. That's what I talked about, the body language of an A1GP car. Carbon fibre, gravel. Look at Alan's face. Man, that's going to cost me a ton of money.
Absolutely right, but it's not just the money, it's the position on the grid. They were looking to try and move it up, and they're down in 16th place, and that's not good news for Team Australia at all.
And it's not good news for this part of racetrack, because you can see there's gravel and other bits and pieces of bodywork on the racetrack down at turns 13.
Well, let's see what Singapore can do. Of course, Christian Murchison's still got to put in a second lap time. He's currently last because he's only got 1 lap time under his belt, having aborted his lap in segment number 2. So this should move him up a little bit, but quite where it will put him, I'm not too sure yet. He's done all his racing in his early days in Australia, raced in Europe as well, but was born in Singapore and therefore is
he does a good job. He goes up to 15th at 1:53.426, the quickest single lap we've seen from Singapore here all weekend. And that is a fine effort from Christian Murchison to be ahead of the USA, who are still waiting to go out and complete their lap. Australia, of course, we've seen the damage to the car there. It is being pushed back into the garage. With Indonesia, Italy, Lebanon and Pakistan all behind Singapore. And Singapore now knocking on the door of Brazil. They're just half a second behind the time from the more fancy. Look at that tyre cut through. It's a flat tyre. And that's the bodywork because the suspension was broken. That tyre will not be replaced because that's down to the driver. There's the bent front suspension. And they will take a lot of time as 6 minutes of the session remaining. And they've then got another further 5 minutes before the next session starts with a further 15 for that. So panic now for Australia to get that damaged corner off. They've got to get a brand new nose assembly fitted as well, and then put a set of strings around the car to make sure that all the wheels point in the correct direction, and not least of all that the car steers in a straight line.
So a real bit of work to do here. It's a bit more like the rally guys trying to get a car desperately ready after an incident, because they've got to try and prepare it for the final qualifying segment. Now, quite a lot of cars are still to go out in this third segment that we're into at the moment. There are 5.5 minutes remaining. On board with Brazil here.
We've got Brazil on track, but the top 10, we're waiting for them to come out on track. They're still hanging back. And of course, what we're going to see is the opposite that we saw in qualifying 1 when everybody piled onto the racetrack at the minute the track was open. Now they're going to wait until the closing moment. Well, I tell you what, I thought he was in trouble coming through turn 5, but he got it all gathered back up. Team Brazil, the car looks good. Rafael Matos is on his way, so there's the onboard view looking down, coming down into turn 9, all the way down. Some drivers take second, most will take second. First for Brazil.
That's interesting, yeah, because you get more wheel spin, but he's decided first gear in qualifying is the way to go. Gears up to third, fourth gear, onto the brakes, little dab on the power, and then he's through turn 11. Now watch him down here. Does he brake? Does he lift? Is it just a semi-lift?
Oh, he's breathing and he's lifting the throttle. He's not flat out or anywhere near it. So the graphic doesn't indicate the part throttle movement. It's either open or shut. So he's back on the throttle again, part throttle, driving out of turn 14, having to work quite hard on the steering wheel to keep the car in check. So it's not as easy a ride as it appears from the cameras on the circuit, as we see from the onboard camera for Rafael Matos.
Briefly saw 267 k's there before he got onto the brakes, back down to second gear. Now he's on the power and accelerating. Now, is this going to improve Brazil's position? Let's see what it does for them. 14th place currently.
No, they stay 14th.
Yep. So no change for Brazil. Emerson Fittipaldi there on the right. I'd be a little bit disappointed with that. Matos was very impressive in the streets of Beijing, but this is a very different kind of racetrack to try and get to grips with these big, powerful cars.
Here's a team, here's a man who could challenge for that front row of the grid, Robbie Kerr. Team GBR out of the car for the last race in Beijing, back in. Well, Robbie Kerr decides he wants to use the throttle to help steer the car as he goes down through these very quick dips into 11 and 12. Car looks well planted, but still just under that braking the car in the unloaded context. Remember, on full throttle you get the benefit of the exhaust gases giving you the downforce. That's why some drivers, and I think Robbie Kerr probably is amongst them, is a left foot braker to maximise the downforce available through the engine being activated.
Oh, he's late on the brakes there. You can just see the back end of the car just slightly sliding, but he kept it beautifully under control. He's out of the last corner. And where is this going to put Great Britain? Currently in fourth place. Is there an improvement? Cross the line, he stays fourth.
52.764. Germany out on track. Germany is quickest in its first sector as Robbie Kerr completes his lap. So Germany with Nico Hülkenberg. There is the young German down in turn 9. Look at the car. That is a car that works properly. It gives the driver confidence. There's not the kind of looseness from the back of the car that we're seeing from others. And again, he uses the throttle in the same way Robbie Kerr did to steer the car around the exit of the corner, but watch through here and again oversteer in the middle of that corner. This lap may not be quite so good at the end as it might have been at the beginning.
He's half a second down, as you can see, on the aggregate that Switzerland have set so far, so this won't be enough for him to claim the top spot from Neil Yarni. He's also trying to get on the front row, remember, because Germany's currently third. To get onto the provisional front row, they've got to go quicker than New Zealand. Sister team New Zealand, run on the engineering side by David Sears, and both cars sharing technical information. But at the moment, New Zealand have the slight edge. Germany across the line and stays third. So no change at the top of the order currently, but we're waiting for New Zealand to come back out. Switzerland stay on top, despite not having been out in this third qualifying segment yet. You're on board now with New Zealand, who is trying to claim the top spot from Switzerland, trying to protect second place as well.
And it's going to be about how he manages the traffic that's ahead of him. He will need to get past. Will there be cooperation as Team USA? Oh, sorry, in fact, Italy, I beg your pardon. So they pull over. It is USA.
Yep,
he pulls
USA.
over to the left, and good track manners from Phil Giebler to let Johnny Halliday get
Johnny Reid.
Yes, Johnny Halliday. It's the wrong nation there.
And New Zealand now just trying to see if they can match that time that Switzerland has set, the aggregate time, the two laps that have been added together. Let's just see, the second split is coming up here. Where does it know? He's well down, 1.7 down on aggregate compared to Switzerland. So he's going to stay in second position overall here, but he's not able to challenge Switzerland.
And in the meantime, there's a further stewards investigation which will take place at the end of the qualifying. This time it's Italy and Singapore. Whatever they've been up to, we didn't really get a clear view of that one, but that's something that's been observed as Johnny Reid comes into final turn 15 for New Zealand. Accelerates out of the corner. Now there's nothing you can do. Your foot's planted to the throttle. You just run up to the maximum RPM, pull a gear, and New Zealand's time 1:53.485. Again, a time most likely run on tyres that have seen another routing. Neil Yarni locks it up going into turn 15. That will shave a tenth or two off his time, plus it'll probably give him a flat spot on that inside wheel.
Yes, but his pole position, his provisional pole, is still secure. His time was a 1:52.7, nothing particularly impressive. Nobody actually has gone that quick in this third qualifying segment. Maybe some temperature changes. This could be one to watch. China, we know they're capable of quick lap times. He did a 1:51.9 last time around. If he can match that again here, then it could move him up maybe, well, a place or two. In fact, it's all very close there with Great Britain as well. I think he'd have to find a bit more than that.
Well, I think what we're seeing in the third session is the teams that ran their new tyres early are holding back as much as possible. And in fact, I think some of the teams have held back as much as have a new set of tyres for the feature race when they make that tyre stop. They're prepared to sacrifice the third qualifying session. They ran new tyres in the first one, ran that tyre in the second one, possibly ran it in the third one to have a new set of tyres for the final qualifying, and then hold back one new set of tyres for the feature race. All that strategy is being played out. Everybody's keeping a weather eye to ensure they don't get caught out, but now the weather appears to be at least as stable as it has been at any point in the weekend to date.
China remains fifth. Again, not a particularly fast lap. Here is Malaysia about to cross the line, and it's an improvement. They're up to seventh, so they gain a few places, pushes South Africa back down to 8th position, Canada to 9th. And you know, France is still down in 10th. France have not made any progress at all. We're still waiting for South Africa and Canada to complete their laps. Checker flag's out, but they got round before the checkered flag came out, so let's see what Canada and South Africa can do.
Well, Canada with Sean McIntosh inside the top 10 and 9th place. His best run was on the second run, and the third run is the worst of the three, but not unexpectedly, because he will also be on tyres that have seen a lap already. South Africa comes up, takes the checkered flag. So what's happened to Adrian Zaug, who is in 8th place, and again, like everybody else in this run, on tyres that have been already used for qualifying 1 or 2.
We also saw USA go through, and they failed to improve, so they're still down in 15th position, and I think they're going to be the most disappointed with this qualifying of all the teams, probably. Switzerland and New Zealand remain on top at the moment, with Germany 3rd, Great Britain 4th, China in a fine 5th, Netherlands 6th, Malaysia the only team, I think, to actually improve their position in that last session, wasn't it?
Well, I think it was, but they may be a team that have done something slightly different. They tend not to follow the pattern that follows the pit lane. They may well have done something which has put a brand new set of tyres on to get that time. But Switzerland, clearly their time 52.746, and that was 1.2 seconds slower than the best time which Switzerland achieved in the second run, and that allows them to retain the provisional pole position, followed very closely indeed by New Zealand, with Germany and Great Britain following up for the second row of the grid.
So this is the situation. 3 out of 4 qualifying segments completed. Still, Switzerland rule the roost from New Zealand in second place. Germany in a fighting third. Then Great Britain in fourth. China in a fine 5th place, just ahead of the Netherlands 6th. Malaysia did pop up to 7th place, so they have gained some speed. South Africa in 8th place. Canada in 9th position, and France languishing down in 10th, and they do seem to be struggling a little bit to find the pace that they need. 11th place for Mexico, the points leaders, and remember they're only 2 points ahead of Germany. Germany currently 3rd, Mexico down in 11th, Czech Republic then in 12th position, followed by Ireland, who obviously have leapt up. Brazil 14th, USA 15th, then Singapore a fine 16th, ahead of Australia, who had that rather scary looking moment coming through turn 12. India, Indonesia follow up, and then it's Italy, Lebanon and Pakistan. So the 22 cars currently looking to line up like that for the sprint race.
It's amazing, but in one part there's huge black clouds on the other side, and it could come down just as easily. And there's Ryan Briscoe there standing in the background while they're working, trying to fix this Team Australia car. Quite surprised by his performance to make that mistake.
OK, just the one session left to go. Let's take you back to the commentary team.
One qualifying segment still to go. Australia racing to get their car ready.
Yes, and they're having to change not just the right front suspension, which we saw clearly was broken. There's damage to the left front suspension as well.
Let's get down to Lee, who's just outside the Australian pit.
Thanks very much. Yeah, Ryan Briscoe this morning, the damage to his car. It will be amazing if this car does get out. The guys have worked frantically. There's been fluid pouring from the front of the car. They've been trying to redo this front suspension, and indeed that is going to be their biggest challenge. But they haven't given up hope just yet.
Great, thank you very much, Lee. Well, let's just hope they are able to do it, but it's green flag already on this session. 14.5 minutes, that's all they've got. Well, it's less than that because they've got to get the car out there in time to get across the line before the checker flag comes out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big ask for any team to work under those pressure considerations, and we've just got 14 minutes of the session remaining, and that means getting the car back up. They've got to put a string around the car to make sure all the suspension components have they're all normally all preset to do so, but you still have got to check it out, because if the car isn't absolutely square, it doesn't matter. The car will not be quick as the consequence.
Shiny new tyres for Team Italy, who are early out onto the circuit. Team Indonesia is currently under a steward's investigation. Not sure quite if we saw...
I tell you what, the stewards are going to earn their money here this weekend. They've got 3 separate investigations from the 3 qualifying sessions. They're not used to working like that.
There's a lot to do, obviously. Brazil early out for this final segment. Rafael Matos, let's see what he can do. Can he improve on his current 14th position? He was able to get into the points last time out in China, but a very different racetrack. Neil Yarni, maybe just content to sit and wait and see if anyone puts him under any kind of threat. There is some potential from New Zealand and from Germany in particular. I think after that, Great Britain and the rest are probably a little too far back to make up the difference, but it's not all over yet for Switzerland.
No, it's not, and of course standing in the pit wall watching what's going on with team principal Max Welti, I'm sure that we'll see Neil Yarni in the car before this session ends. You've got to be prepared to defend. The challenge will clearly come from New Zealand and Germany. It's a long shot. Robbie Kerr would have to be at his inspired best. He's not the most loquacious person out of a car, but he does speak volumes when he's driving a car. Johnny Reid getting ready to come out for Team New Zealand. Currently second quickest, the pole man from the Czech Republic, only for it to all go wrong on the run to the first corner when he collided with Team Germany. They're desperate to score some points and get their campaign back on track. He's showing good pace here. He'd actually probably be relatively happy with second, but I'm sure they'll try to see if they can't nip a bit more speed out of the car. The question is the track as fast as it was, particularly in segment 2 when we saw some very rapid times being set? I think the racetrack has stayed fairly consistent. The only thing that's going to change it will be the cloud base coming over the circuit, which in theory should see the track conditions improve. It will drop the track temperature. We did see a drop in temperature between qualifying 1 and 2 by about 7 degrees. So I don't think the sun's really shining any more than it was at the beginning of qualifying 2. So track conditions, I would think, are reasonable. It's just cars going off track and dragging rubbish on, particularly down coming into turn 13, where we saw Australia go off big time, and Ryan Briscoe found himself oversteering when he didn't really want oversteer. No, it was a fairly dramatic ride through the gravel for Australia. Watching Nur Ali here for Pakistan, and he's broken the 2-minute barrier in the second qualifying segment, got down to 1:58.5, so that was a big improvement on what he'd been doing earlier. Well, there is the sky behind us. It's a nice shade of grey, but it isn't really in threatening rain. We've got, well, just 11.5 minutes remaining. The car going slowly down the inside. Is that a car run problem, or is he just getting out of the way? I think that's a car run problem. Couldn't quite identify it. It was white with some colours on it. There it is, Lebanon, indeed.
Yeah. And they were on a hot lap, so Khalil Bashir pulls off to the side of the road, and obviously in mechanical problems with that car.
Well, will they want to bring that car, because there is no marshals nearby? That car needs to be ideally pulled to safety. Will this see a safety car deployed, which will be the real joker in the qualifying pack? I have to think they want to get that car removed as quickly. A yellow flag certainly down to that part of the racetrack, so that's going to preclude anybody going through the second sector quicker than their previous bests. And that is red flag indeed. As I suggested, we might see a red flag, and there it is. The red flag has been thrown, and but will the clock continue to run?
Well, wait, no, the clock is still running at the moment.
Running, yes.
Yeah, still running at the moment, so it may well be that they'll lose a bit of an opportunity for track time.
But those people that were on track, on new tyres, whether on a time lap or an out lap, will they benefit? What will happen to them?
Yeah, well, that's always the question, of course, when you get the red flag. Depends if they were on the out lap or whether they were on a flying lap. India had just gone on an out lap. They'll probably get the chance to go out again, I would think. And as long as the team gets on the radio quickly and says, look after your tyres, don't push too hard, hopefully it won't have too great an effect. But something has shut down on that Lebanese car, and Khalil Bashir is unable to return it to the pits, so they're going to have to tow it out of the way. Well, the marshals are there now, pushing it out of the way. And hopefully we can get this session under green flag conditions once again fairly quickly.
Well, the car being pushed onto the grass, but of course the bottom of the car being the lowest point of the car, it's found itself beached on the grass, and the engineers will be very concerned to see that the corner workers pushing on the rear wing. That's not something that engineers like to see, and cars are in a position like that, about to be cleared away to safety, to have them heave on the rear of the rear wing.
So Brazil into the pits after that, and I think everybody else who was trying to go out to do a hot lap has come back in. Hopefully it won't affect anyone. Pakistan have been given their time. He crossed the line just as the red flag came out, and he was ahead anyway of where the yellow flag had been, so he should be safe in terms of holding that lap time, but he will line up last of the 22 nations. Brazil here, as we mentioned, 14th currently, but the danger here is that the rain is going to be moving in, and you can see it's a pretty heavy rainstorm that's heading this way, and it's not going to be long before it hits us, so this could be a real problem for anybody trying to move themselves up on the grid.
Well, you're going to have to roll the dice. Either you go out, and the bulk of the field, no doubt, when the track reopens, will do so. We've got just over 8.5 minutes remaining. There's not a lot of time to play with. There are the clouds, they're gathering, and they're getting more and more grey, as you see Khalil Bashir being pushed to safety, still in the car, but those clouds are mounting, and it only takes a millisecond to see the first drops of rain begin to fall. Currently not doing so, but when this racetrack goes back to green, still under a red flag, there are still safety cars out on track. They've got to come back into the pit lane before the track can once again revert to green, and we're going to see the best part of 20 cars, because Lebanon's out of it, Pakistan has done its time, so 20 cars into the space of some, well, there we are. We had in fact, the clock was stopped. We saw it running on that particular graphic, but it is now going back to, the clock has been stopped at 10:49. That takes a great deal of pressure off everybody in the pit lane, gives the people an opportunity to pick and choose when they want to go out, as we look at Nico Hülkenberg once again having the belts just tightened down, and those belts are tucked in underneath to stop them flapping around, as they did when I was doing my lap at the top of the programme. It looked like some amateur where those belts were flapping around.
Never mind, you'll remember next time, John. Well, Neil Yarni still waiting and seeing if it's worth coming out. He's in pole position. He's where he wants to be. He's got an advantage over the 2 laps added together of some 0.3 of a second. And we'll wait to see whether he can defend. It looks like he's going to defend his pole from last year here, which he managed to do over Team France, who are very, very quick. But of course, remember, Team France did come back to win both of the races. Some fantastic racing we saw here. Overtaking is possible, big, wide areas of the track where you really can get alongside somebody. And it looks as though they're going to be able to push that car behind the barrier. We ought to be able to get this session underway.
Yes, they've had to push it a long way. The wind beginning to pick up again. Yeah. That's an indication that the rain is also going to be coming along with the wind. We saw the wind drop, and now it's picked up again. So let's hope that this racetrack will, it's supposed to start 15:24, and that's probably within about a minute from now.
Yeah, so we've got just about 35 seconds until it goes green once again, and then we'll be getting this session back underway. Red flag at the end of the pit lane. That's still going to be converted to green. I wonder if we're going to see a lot of cars back out there. The clock having been stopped at the time the red flag came out, so they've still got just under 11 minutes remaining in this fourth and final qualifying segment. And there's a team that needs something, because France is way down in 10th position. That's not where they want to be.
No, not at all. And I think France are looking at starting probably no further up than about 6th at very best.
It's green flag on the final qualifying segment, and Brazil straight back out again. They were on track when the red came out. They've decided to go straight on circuit once again. But also coming out is Team Malaysia and Team Canada.
Yes, and Germany right down the back of the pit lane, also just coming on to the pit lane. So Nico Hülkenberg and Team Germany engineers feeling that this is the time to come out. He's coming down the pit lane fairly slowly.
He's going to make sure he gets a gap.
He wants a clear lap. He doesn't want to run into the back of cars, or run up to the back of cars as he did in the case of Ireland on his outlap. He's got Singapore behind him, so he could probably bully Singapore into staying behind him. Whether the others, France amongst them, USA coming out as well, well, that will be the case, we don't know. But there you see what everybody is concerned about, that big roll of black cloud.
Yeah, and it could affect things still in this qualifying session. We're in the final 9.5 minutes or so of qualifying. Only a few teams able to really improve their lot, but many who want to. And there you can see just how heavy the cloud is. Watch out for any drops of rain on that onboard camera, because it's a long circuit and it may well start raining in one part before it rains down where we are.
This is a part of racetrack it's going to rain on, around turns 7 and 8.
Yeah, that's definitely where the heaviest cloud is.
Now, what's happening to Brazil, though? A bit of... Now, what's that fell off the car? Something...
cooler. It looked like one of the coolers, actually.
I think you might be right. At one of those coolers that are attached into the air intakes on the radiators to keep the car cool when it's stationary in the pits.
Yeah.
So maybe one of them was not removed when the car left the pit lane. It's certainly been removed now because it's lying on the racetrack.
Yeah, that's not clever, is it? Bits of debris falling off the car as it goes out onto the circuit. Hopefully that won't affect anybody else. Switzerland still comfortably in provisional pole position here.
Well, is it or not? It's difficult to tell what it is, but certainly it's not in an ideal part of the racetrack. That's in the exit of turn 4. You know,
just
some cars,
offline, isn't it?
It's as close to being offline as you can get, and I wouldn't be very comfortable if I was race director allowing that piece of equipment to lay on the racetrack. But of course, unless there is a marshal there and you run a stationary yellow flag at that position, or in fact a waved yellow flag, it ain't going to get removed.
Well, they've put up a message to say that there is debris at that section of circuit. Whether the drivers, hopefully once they've seen it, they'll know exactly what the situation is. Now then, Malaysia onto their hot lap to try and improve on 7th position currently. Alex Yoong on home turf wants to become the first driver to win on home soil. No nation has yet managed to achieve that. Czech Republic has come closest. They finished 2nd at Brno earlier on in this season. But Alex Yoong's going to have to do something if he's going to win here in Sepang, because currently he's due to line up on the 4th row of the grid.
So it comes down into turn 4. You don't need to try and brake so late, because you can use... There's that debris there at turn 4. As I surmised it was. Now he comes through the sweeps of turn 5. Oh, an oversteer in the mid-corner. That's going to catch his attention. And again, understeers. He comes through turn 6. So the balance of Malaysia's car clearly has not been resolved. The work they did between qualifying 1 and 2 has not improved this car.
No, that's right. He's pushing hard, but I'm not sure the time's going to be coming. Faraz Fawzi in the middle there, who drove the car in the rookie session on Friday morning. To the team.
Welcome back. You'll be pleased to hear that we have re-established contact with Malaysia, the Sepang International Circuit, the venue for this weekend's A1GP. The final qualifying session now into its final few minutes as well. I think we'll consider ourselves lucky that the weather has managed to hold off for this long. Let's get you back to the track. Our commentary team, John Watson and Ben Edwards.
Really in a position to challenge, maybe for 3rd place, Nico Hülkenberg for Germany. Not
I don't think. I mean, it's wishing and hoping, but it ain't going to get it done. I think Great Britain are fairly secure in 4th place unless something unforeseen should happen. And Frankie Cheng for China coming out now. Again, he's got to do an awful lot to make up the difference between in 5th place and for Team G. I think GBR is a sort of a bit of an island between the continents of Europe with Germany and that of China.
Changing geography. And there is Johnny Reid getting ready to come back out. As you say, I'm not sure it's going to make a huge difference, but let's wait and see.
But remember, going back to Brno, if the front row of the grid stands as it is currently, with Switzerland and pole and New Zealand alongside in the front row of the grid. Remember what happened in Brno when contact from pole position there, Johnny Reid for New Zealand and Nico Hülkenberg for Germany, and in that incident it did look as if the New Zealand car pulled over to the left, and that's when the contact was made with Germany.
So still no action from New Zealand. Great Britain, as you saw, out on track now, but we don't think that they're going to really move from their 4th position. China in 5th place. China unlikely to move up. Of the people who've not yet run, who could move up? Well, South Africa could, in theory, nip past Malaysia. It's quite close, 7th and 8th. Australia here, what can they do? They could perhaps, they need to find a bit of time just to move up to 16th. That's how difficult it's been. But I tell you what, these guys have done a great job. The Alan Docking crew, they've got this car repaired. Remember how much damage was done to it, and they've got the car out.
They've done a stunning job. Switzerland really, I think, are celebrating that they've got their pole position. Neil Yarney, now whether New Zealand have opted not to bother going out, and in fact, yes, they have done a sensible decision, because what it means is that these two teams that are on the front row of the grid have been able to save another set of tyres, whether they're new tyres or whether they're tyres that have just done a lap at most. But that is a sensible judgment from the two nations that are on the front row of the grid, and it's congratulations to Switzerland, New Zealand and Germany. They are the top 3.
Neil Yarney is back good and proper now. He might have raced last time out in Beijing, his first outing of the 2nd season, but he's come back and taken pole position at the first track that he knows and where he hasn't had problems. It's his 3rd pole position of his career in A1, 2 pole positions last season, including here at Malaysia. And he's had 1 victory in the past. Well, he may well add to that come race day here. But Australia just trying to improve in the closing stages. Any chance here for Ryan Briscoe? Let's see if he gains 1 place perhaps over Team Singapore. Across the line he goes. No, he stays where he was in 17th place. But well done to the guys. Big applause to the crew there who managed to get the car out despite the damage done in qualifying segment 3. Thomas Enger's still on it, isn't he, in the Czech Republic car. He's still completing his hot lap. He's trying to move up past Ireland. May have a chance, but really we're not seeing quick lap times in this 4th segment. It's an indicator that the track has gone off a bit in terms of pace. It was quick in segment number 2 particularly, pretty quick in segment number 1. But ever since then, it just hasn't been offering the same level of grip for the drivers, and they've been struggling to match their earlier times. And that's why we're not really seeing too many changes in the latter stages. Let's just watch the Czech car across the line. So no change there. Czech Republic car stays in 14th place, and China also just finishing off a lap as well, but I don't think we'll see any change for Frankie Cheng. Another great effort, mind you, for Team China. He qualified in 4th place in the Czech Republic, and he's qualified in 5th position here, and he's just going to show how much he's learnt in the last few years racing in British Formula Renault Series. He's been one of the front runners in the 2006 season in British Formula Renault. Big jump up to A1GP, but he's handled it absolutely superbly, and surely the first podium finish for a Chinese driver in A1GP is not far off. His best finish is a 4th place, and if he starts in 5th position tomorrow in the sprint race, well, he'll have every opportunity to get a podium in either the sprint or the feature. Let's just see what the lap time is as he comes around. His best has been a 151.9. Just waiting for that to come up, actually. Just a little slow updating, so we'll have to wait and see what that is. But I think the team should be pretty satisfied with their efforts there. Robbie Kerr also just coming around to complete his lap. Great Britain is going to start from the 2nd row, 4th place for Robbie Kerr, and I think he'll be reasonably satisfied with that. They've had 1 or 2 little niggly problems with the gearbox, particularly on Friday's running, and to come back from that and start from the 2nd row of the grid, pretty much anything possible from there. But he's going to have to watch out for Germany being alongside him. Nico Hülkenberg, who will be a bit disappointed not to have been in the challenge in the end for pole, and Neil Yarney, relaxed, easygoing. He really thinks a lot about his racing. He's an intelligent young guy. He's very experienced, that F1 testing experience behind him. And he was telling me how different driving these cars is to driving a Formula 1 car. And it took him a little bit of time to readapt his driving style to the A1GP car, but he certainly has done it effectively here, hasn't he? Because he's taken pole position, and he will be tough to beat come race day. Congratulations from the other crews there. Some of the guys he would have worked with last year as well, because the Swiss car was run by the Dams team last year. So split off to its own separate team, and there he is with Johnny Reid, who's ended up 2nd.
job. The Alan Docking mechanics did a brilliant job to get the car back out on track at all. So being in reasonable shape for the races.
OK, well, let's just take a look then of how the drivers are going to line up for Sunday's sprint race at the Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia. Neil Yarni returns to A1GP, returned in China, and he's in pole. Johnny Reid from him in second, Nico Hulkenberg in third. In fourth, Robbie Kerr for Team GBR, Kung Fu Cheng of China. Fifth, Andrew and Bleekmolen in sixth. Alex Young, incidentally, in seventh place there, and he's been speaking to Simon Hill.
Alex, looked like you had to make quite a few changes during that session.
Yeah, the car really wasn't behaving the way we thought it would. And then we kept making changes, and it didn't behave the way we thought it would again after that. So, but also I think the conditions changed, which confused things. The sun suddenly came out, and the last two sections we lost grip, and I think it's the same for everyone. We just didn't quite nail it with getting the car completely right.
In session 3, segment 3 rather, you're the only car that actually really improved. So have you found from that, you think that's where you're going to go in terms of setup?
Well, I think what it was we saved our new tyres for the last two runs when we should have done them in the first two runs, because people did it in the first two runs because they thought it was going to rain. It didn't rain, but the sun suddenly came out really hard. So I think the third and fourth session was slower, and we needed to be on the new tyres in the first two sessions so that we could have been quicker.
Now, obviously, victory already this year. It's going to be a lot of crowd here cheering you on tomorrow. What are your thoughts in terms of what you've got to offer from a setup point of view, in terms of how you're going to be able to race tomorrow?
I don't think we're going to change it too much. Or we might change it a lot, actually. I don't know at this point. We need to go look at the data and see what exactly happened during that session. But you know, it's a long race, and this track's really good for overtaking. So anything can happen tomorrow.
We look forward to some overtaking from you, Alex. Have a good race tomorrow.
All right, thanks. Cheers.